Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, looking out at the massive alien space station ahead. The Harmony's Edge was a small ship compared to the giant structure that floated in space before them. The station was called Dominion Central, and it was the most important place in the galaxy for politics and trade. Now, Jake had been a ship captain for 15 years, but he had never seen anything like this. The station was huge, maybe 50 times bigger than the largest human space station. It had thousands of lights blinking across its surface, and ships from dozens of different alien races were docked at its ports. "Sir, we're getting a message." "From the station," said Lieutenant Ben Cooper from his position at the communications desk. "They're giving us permission to dock at Port 7. Jake nodded. "Take us in slowly." "I don't want to give them any reason to think we're a threat." The ship moved forward carefully. In the main cabin behind the bridge, Ambassador Lisa Carter was preparing for the most important meeting in human history. She had been Earth's top diplomat for 8 years, but today she would be speaking for all of humanity to the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Lisa looked at her reflection in the mirror and straightened her blue diplomatic uniform. She had spent months preparing for this day, learning about alien cultures and customs. Today, humans would finally ask to join the Galactic Dominion, the alliance that controlled most of the known galaxy. Colonel Ryan Parker walked into the room. He was a tall man with gray hair and serious eyes. As the military advisor for the mission, he was responsible for keeping the human delegation safe. "The aliens have been watching our ship since we entered their space," he said. "They have at least 20 warships in the area." "That's normal," Lisa replied. "They do that with all new species." "It's just a precaution." Ryan didn't look convinced. "Maybe, but I've been studying their ship movements. They're not just watching us, they're surrounding us." Dr. Emma Rodriguez joined them. She was a scientist who studied alien life forms. Her job was to help the humans understand how to communicate with the different species they would meet. "I've been reading about the Dominion Council," she said. "There are 12 major species that make the decisions. The Zephyrians are the most powerful. They're the ones we need to convince." The ship docked at the station with a small bump. Jake announced over the ship's communication system that they had arrived. The 3 members of the diplomatic team gathered their materials and prepared to leave the ship. The airlock opened, and they stepped onto the station. The air was different here, thicker and with a strange smell. The gravity was also stronger than on Earth, making each step feel heavier. 2 alien guards were waiting for them. They were tall and thin, with blue skin and 4 arms each. Their eyes were large and black, and they wore uniforms that seemed to be made of metal. "Follow us," one of the guards said in perfect English. "The council is waiting." They walked through long corridors filled with aliens of all shapes and sizes. Some looked almost human, while others were so strange that Emma had trouble understanding how they could be alive. There were beings made of gas floating in clear containers, creatures that looked like giant insects, and others that seemed to be made entirely of metal. The corridor led to a massive chamber with a high ceiling. In the center was a circular table with 12 seats, each designed for a different type of alien. Around the edges of the room, hundreds of other aliens sat in galleries, watching the proceedings. The human delegation was led to a small platform in the center of the circle. Lisa stepped forward and looked around at the 12 beings who would decide humanity's future. The largest of the aliens stood up. He was made of what looked like living crystal, with multiple arms and a voice that sounded like breaking glass. "I am High Consul Zareth of the Zephyrian Empire," he announced. "I speak for the Dominion Council." Lisa bowed slightly as she had been taught. "Thank you for meeting with us, High Consul. I am Ambassador Lisa Carter, representing the United Earth government and all human colonies." Zareth made a sound that might have been laughter. "Humans, yes, We know about your species. You have been sending messages for 50 years, asking to join our alliance. That's correct, Lisa said. We believe that humanity can contribute to the Dominion and benefit from membership in your alliance. Another alien spoke up. This one looked like a giant insect with 6 legs and wings. Contribute? What could your primitive species possibly offer us? Lisa kept her voice calm and diplomatic. Humans are creative and adaptable. We have developed new technologies and explored many worlds. We can offer our knowledge and our friendship. Xerath's crystal body seemed to shine brighter. Your species is young and aggressive. You fight wars among yourselves. You consume resources without thinking about the future. Why should we trust you? Because we want to learn, Lisa replied. We want to become better. We believe that working with other species will help us grow and improve. The council members spoke among themselves in languages that the human translation devices couldn't understand. After several minutes, Xerath stood up again. The Dominion Council has discussed your request many times over the years, he said. We have watched your species develop and spread to other worlds. We have seen your wars and your conflicts. Lisa felt her heart beating faster. This was the moment that would determine humanity's future in the galaxy. Our decision is final, Xerath continued. Humans will not be admitted to the Galactic Dominion. Your species is too dangerous and unpredictable to be trusted with the responsibilities of membership. The words hit Lisa like a physical blow. She had prepared for this possibility, but she had hoped that humanity's peaceful intentions would be enough. Furthermore, Xerath said, the Council has decided that human expansion must be controlled. Your species reproduces too quickly and consumes too many resources. From this day forward, all human worlds will be subject to Dominion oversight. Colonel Parker stepped forward. What exactly does that mean? It means that you will pay tribute to the Dominion, Xerath explained. You will limit your population growth according to our guidelines. You will not expand to new worlds without our permission. And you will accept Dominion inspectors on all your worlds to ensure compliance. Lisa felt the blood drain from her face. And if we refuse these terms, Xerath's crystal body flashed with different colors. Then you will be pacified. We have positioned fleet elements near your space. You have 7 standard days to accept our terms and begin compliance. The other council members nodded in agreement. The insect-like alien clicked its mandibles. Your species should be grateful. We are offering you a chance to survive under our protection. Ryan's hand moved instinctively toward his weapon, but Lisa quickly shook her head. Starting a fight here would only make things worse. We need time to discuss this with our government, Lisa said. 7 days, Xerath repeated. No more. The guards moved forward, indicating that the meeting was over. As they were escorted back to their ship, Lisa's mind was racing. Humanity had hoped for friendship and cooperation, but instead they were being given an ultimatum: submit or be destroyed. Back on the ship, Jake was waiting for them. How did it go? He asked. Lisa looked at her companions. Ryan's face was grim, and Emma looked shocked. We need to get back to Earth immediately, Lisa said, and we need to send a message ahead of us. As the Harmony's Edge undocked from the station and began its journey back to human space, Lisa wondered if they had just witnessed the beginning of a war that humanity couldn't win. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when humans were pushed too far. The emergency session began at dawn in Geneva. President Helen Brooks sat at the head of the long table in the United Earth Council chamber, looking at the faces of representatives from every human world and space station. The news from the Dominion had reached Earth 12 hours ago, and panic was spreading through human space. The situation is clear, President Brooks said, her voice steady despite the crisis. The Galactic Dominion has rejected our membership application and given us An ultimatum. We have 6 days to decide whether to submit to their control or face their military forces. Admiral Sam Chun stood up from his seat. He was the head of the Earth Defense Force, a man who had spent his entire career preparing for threats from space. Madam President, our intelligence suggests the Dominion has already moved fleets into position near our outer colonies. This ultimatum is just for show. They plan to attack regardless of our answer. Senator Paul Martinez from the Mars colony shook his head. We can't jump to that conclusion. Maybe there's still room for negotiation. We could offer them trade agreements. Or technology sharing. What technology? Asked Dr. Kate Williams, who ran the Colonial Development Program. They made it clear they see us as primitives. Their ships are bigger and more advanced than ours. Their weapons are stronger. They have thousands of worlds while we have less than 50. The argument continued for hours. Some representatives wanted to fight. Others wanted to surrender. And a few still hoped for a diplomatic solution. President Brooks listened to all of them, but she knew the real decision would come down to military capability. Admiral Chun activated the room's main display screen. It showed a map of human space, with red dots marking Dominion fleet positions. As you can see, they have us surrounded. Our scouts report at least 6,000 ships moving toward our territory. Representative Carol Johnson from the Titan mining colony stood up. 6,000 ships? How many do we have? About 800. Combat vessels, Admiral Chun replied. Most of them are patrol ships and system defense platforms. We have maybe 50 ships that could stand up to their main battle cruisers. The room fell silent. The numbers were overwhelming. Even if every human ship fought perfectly, they would be outnumbered 8-1. There's something else, Admiral Chun continued. Our deep space reconnaissance teams have detected Dominion forces moving toward civilian targets. They're not just planning to attack our military. They want to hit our colonies directly. Dr. Williams pulled up population statistics on her tablet. New Dakota has 3 million people. Kepler's Rest has 2 million. If they attack those worlds, they're not just trying to defeat us, said Colonel Frank Miller, the military liaison. They want to terrorize us into submission. President Brooks had heard enough debate. Admiral Chun, I need to know our real options. Can we fight them? Admiral Chun looked around the room before answering. With conventional weapons and tactics? No, we would lose badly, and billions of people would die. You said conventional weapons, President Brooks noted. What about unconventional ones? The Admiral exchanged glances with General Maria Santos, who had been quiet during most of the meeting. She was in charge of the military's special research. Projects, the ones that even most government officials didn't know about. Madam President, General Santos said carefully, there are some projects that might change the equation. But using them would mean crossing lines we've never crossed before. What kind of lines? General Santos activated a secure display that required her biometric identification. For the past 10 years, we've been developing nanotechnology for military applications. The original purpose was ship repair and construction in space, but the technology has other potential uses. The display showed microscopic robots, smaller than bacteria, designed to break down and rebuild matter at the molecular level. These nanobots can consume almost any material and use it to build more nanobots or other structures. In theory, they could eat through enemy ship hulls and turn the material into weapons. Senator Martinez looked horrified. That sounds like a weapon of mass destruction. It is, General Santos admitted. Once released, nanobots are almost impossible to stop. They would consume enemy ships, stations, maybe even planets if we programmed them that way. Dr. Williams leaned forward. What about safeguards? How do we control them? We've built in genetic locks, General Santos explained. The nanobots are programmed to only attack non-human technology and biology. They won't harm humans or human-built equipment. President Brooks studied the technical data on the screen. The nanobots were tiny, but they reproduced exponentially. A single canister could theoretically consume an entire fleet if given enough time. How many people know about this project? She asked. Less than 100, General Santos replied. The research was conducted at hidden facilities outside human space. Even the test subjects don't know the full scope of what we've developed. Commander Alex Turner, who had been monitoring Dominion fleet movements from his reconnaissance ship, spoke up through the communication link. Madam President, I'm seeing more ship movements near the frontier. They're definitely preparing for a major attack. President Brooks made her decision. General Santos, how quickly can these nanobots be deployed? We have weapons ready for immediate use, Santos replied. But once we release them, there's no taking them back. This isn't just declaring war. It's declaring a war of extinction. The room was completely silent. Everyone understood what was being discussed. The nanobots wouldn't just defeat the Dominion forces. They would consume them entirely, turning their ships and weapons into more tools for human use. The Dominion thinks we're primitive, President Brooks said quietly. They think they can bully us into submission because we're younger and smaller than they are. Maybe it's time to show them what humans do when we're threatened. Admiral Chun stood up. Madam President, if we do this, there's no going back. The galaxy will see us as monsters. A galaxy already sees us as insects to be stepped on, President Brooks replied. The question is whether we die quietly or fight back. She looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. I want a vote. All in favor of authorizing the use of nanotechnology weapons against Dominion forces? One by one, hands went up around the table. Some representatives voted quickly, others hesitated, but in the end, the decision was unanimous. Motion carried, President Brooks announced. General Santos, you have authorization to deploy nanobot weapons against any Dominion forces that enter human space or threaten human colonies. General Santos nodded grimly. Yes, Madam President. I'll coordinate with Admiral Chun to position our forces. As the meeting broke up, President Brooks remained in her chair, looking at the star map on the main screen. In 6 days, the Dominion expected humanity's surrender. Instead, they were going to get something completely different. Commander Turner's voice came through the communication system again. Madam President, the Dominion fleets are beginning their final approach. It looks like they're planning to hit New Dakota first. Understood, Commander. Stay clear of the combat zone. You're about to witness something the galaxy has never seen before. President Brooks activated the emergency broadcast system that would carry her message to every human world. Citizens of Earth and all human colonies, this is your president. In 5 days, alien forces will attack our worlds. They believe humans will surrender rather than fight. They're about to learn how wrong they are. She paused, thinking about the weapons that were already being loaded onto human ships. To any Dominion forces listening to this transmission, you have one chance to withdraw peacefully. If you attack human civilians, you will face the full force of human retaliation. We are not the primitive species you think we are. The message ended, and President Brooks sat back in her chair. Across human space, military commanders were receiving their orders and loading weapons that could consume entire fleets. The Dominion had wanted to see what humans would do when threatened. They were about to find out. The Dominion attack began exactly when they said it would. High Admiral Zentok of the Vrathan Empire commanded the combined fleet from his flagship, a massive ship called the Star Crusher. He had fought in dozens of wars across the galaxy, always on the winning side. Today would be no different. Target the human colony world of Haven. Zentok ordered his fleet commanders. We will show them what happens to species that refuse Dominion authority. The alien fleet was impressive. 300 warships from 6 different species, each one larger and more powerful than the biggest human vessel. The Vrathan ships looked like giant insects with metal wings. The Zephyrian vessels were made of living crystal that could repair itself. The Korthax brought mechanical ships with weapons that could punch through any known armor. Captain Ellen Foster stood on the bridge of the Earth's Fury, watching the enemy fleet approach Haven Colony. Her ship was one of only 12 human vessels defending the world, but she wasn't worried. Hidden in her ship's cargo bay were weapons that would change everything. "Ma'am, the alien fleet is launching attack wings," reported Lieutenant Danny Walsh from the sensor station. 200 fighter craft heading straight for the colony. Ellen nodded. "Launch our interceptors, but keep the main fleet at distance for now." The human fighters were fast and well piloted, but they were badly outnumbered. Ellen watched as her pilots fought bravely against the alien attack craft. Several human ships were destroyed, but they managed to stop most of the enemy fighters. From reaching the colony, High Admiral Zentok was pleased with the initial results. As expected, human technology is inferior. Begin the main assault. Target their orbital defense platforms first, then the population centers. The alien warships moved into attack formation. Energy beams and missiles streaked across space toward the human defensive positions. Several human ships were destroyed in the first exchange, their shields overwhelmed by the superior alien weapons. "Now," Ellen said quietly, Lieutenant Walsh activated a special transmission that was sent to every human ship in the fleet. It was a simple code word: harvest. The human ships suddenly changed their tactics. Instead of trying to match the aliens in direct combat, they launched thousands of small pods toward the enemy fleet. The aliens detected the launches, but weren't concerned. The pods looked like primitive kinetic weapons, or maybe sensor drones. "They're trying to overwhelm our point defenses with mass launches," Zentok said to his tactical officer. "Destroy as many as possible, but don't worry about the ones that get through. Those small pods can't do significant damage to our ships." The first pods reached the alien fleet and exploded against the hulls of the Vrathan ships. The explosions were small, hardly worth noticing. But seconds later, something strange began to happen. Small gray patches appeared on the hull of the Star Crusher where the pods had exploded. The patches began to grow, spreading across the ship's armor like some kind of infection. Where the gray patches touched, the ship's hull began to dissolve. "What's happening to our armor?" Zentok demanded. His science officer ran scans of the affected areas. "Sir, there are microscopic machines consuming our hull material. They're breaking down the metal and using it to build more machines." More pods were exploding against ships throughout the fleet. The gray patches were appearing everywhere, and they were spreading faster and faster. The Zephyrian crystal ships tried to repair themselves, but the nanobots consumed the new crystal as quickly as it formed. "All ships, pull back from the human fleet," Zentok ordered. "We need to understand what we're dealing with." But it was too late. The nanobots had already spread to other ships through rescue operations and debris collection. When damaged Vrathan fighters returned to their carriers, they brought the nanobots with them. When ships tried to help each other with repairs, the nanobots jumped from vessel to vessel. Captain Foster watched from the Earth's Fury as the alien fleet began to fall apart. The massive Star Crusher was now half consumed, its hull eaten away. To expose the internal structures, smaller ships were being dissolved completely, their crews escaping in pods that were also being consumed by the nanobots. "Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission from the alien flagship," Lieutenant Walsh reported. "Put it on the main screen." High Admiral Zentok appeared on the screen, his insect-like face showing terror for the first time in his military career. Behind him, the bridge of his ship was literally falling apart as nanobots consumed the walls and equipment. "Human vessel, what have you done to us?" Zentok demanded. Ellen stood up from her command chair. "We defended ourselves. You attacked our world and killed our people. This is what happens when you threaten humans. Call off these machines," Zentok pleaded. "We'll withdraw from your space." "I can't call them off," Ellen replied truthfully. "They're programmed to consume all non-human technology. The only way to stop them is to destroy every infected ship before they spread further." Zentok's image cut out as his ship's communication system was consumed. Ellen watched as the once mighty Star Crusher broke apart completely, its pieces becoming raw material for more MANOBOTS. The alien fleet was in complete chaos. Ships were abandoning their positions and fleeing toward the edge of the system, but many of them were already infected. The nanobots were spreading through the fleet faster than the aliens could. "Retreat." Lieutenant Walsh looked up from his station. "Ma'am, we're receiving surrender requests from 17 alien vessels. Tell them to jettison all their technology and evacuate to escape pods," Ellen ordered. "The nanobots will consume their ships, but the crew can survive if they abandon everything." News of the disaster at Haven Colony spread through the Dominion faster than their fleets could retreat. On Dominion Central, High Consul Zirith called an emergency meeting of the Council. "How is this possible?" demanded the Cortex representative, whose mechanical body was designed for warfare. "Humans are a primitive species. They should not have weapons like this." Zirith's crystal form was flickering with different colors, a sign of extreme agitation. "Our intelligence was wrong. Humans are not primitive. They have developed something we have never seen before." The insect-like Vrathan representative clicked his mandibles in distress. "High Admiral Zentok's entire fleet has been destroyed. 300 ships reduced to raw materials in less than 6 hours. "It's worse than that," said the gaseous Nethys delegate from his containment suit. "The human machines are still active. They're consuming the wreckage and building new devices. Our scouts report that the humans now have twice as many ships as they started with." The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans hadn't just defended themselves. They had turned the Dominion's own attack into resources for their own military. Commander Nick Hayes led a human strike force deep into Dominion space, targeting military supply depots and shipyards. His ships carried cargo holds full of nanobot canisters, and every target they hit became material for more human weapons. The Cortex shipyard at Gamma station was protected by energy shields and automated defenses, but the nanobots simply consumed the shield generators and turned the defense platforms into attack drones that fired on their former masters. "Sir, the Cortex are evacuating the station," reported his tactical officer. "Let them go," Nick replied. "We want their technology, not their lives. The nanobots will strip everything useful from the station and build us a forward base here." Back on Earth, President Brooks received reports from across human space. The Dominion attacks had failed completely, and human forces were now advancing into enemy territory. But the reports also contained troubling information. "The nanobots are working exactly as designed," General Santis reported, "but they're almost too effective. Every enemy installation we take becomes a production facility for more weapons. At this rate, we'll have the largest fleet in the galaxy within a few months." President Brooks studied the tactical displays showing human advances. "The Dominion started this war because they thought we were weak. Now they're learning the truth about human determination." She activated the galactic communication network that reached every civilized world. Her message was broadcast to billions of aliens across thousands of systems. "People of the galaxy, this is President Helen Brooks of Earth. Your leaders attacked. our worlds and killed our people because they believed humans would submit to their demands. They were wrong. The transmission showed footage of the battle at Haven Colony, with Dominion ships being consumed by nanobots and converted into human vessels. This is what happens when you threaten human children and human homes. Your fleets are being destroyed. Your military bases are being consumed. Your weapons are becoming our weapons. President Brooks paused, letting the images speak for themselves. To the Dominion Council, you wanted war. Now you have it. Surrender now, and we'll let your people live. Continue fighting and watch as your worlds burn and your technology becomes the foundation of human expansion across the galaxy. The message ended with a simple statement that would echo across the galaxy for years to come. You asked what humans do when threatened. Now you know. The Dominion's response came 3 days after President Brooks' message. High Consul Zereth was desperate, and desperate leaders made terrible decisions. If the Dominion couldn't match human technology, they would resort to tactics that had worked. For thousands of years, terror. The Zephyrian war fleet arrived at Green Valley, a peaceful human agricultural world with 3 million colonists. The planet was defended by only 2 patrol ships, nowhere near enough to stop the alien attack force. Captain Roy Thompson commanded the human defense from his small vessel, the Defender. He sent out distress calls, but the nearest human fleet was 2 days away. The colonists below were farmers and their families, people who had never seen war. "Sir, the alien fleet is demanding our surrender," reported his communications officer. Roy looked at the enemy ships on his display. 30 Zephyrian warships, each one capable of destroying his vessel with a single shot. "Tell them we refuse." The alien response was swift and brutal. Energy beams from orbit struck the planet's major cities. The capital city of New Hope was vaporized in seconds, along with 400,000 people. The farming communities of Green River and Sunset Valley followed minutes later. Roy watched in horror as the peaceful world was turned into a burned wasteland. The aliens weren't trying to conquer Green Valley. They were trying to send a message to humanity. Surrender or watch all your worlds die. The news reached Earth within hours. President Brooks stood in the Situation Room, looking at the images of Green Valley's destruction. The planet was still burning, its atmosphere filled with smoke and radiation. 3 million people, she said quietly. Men, women, children, all dead because we refused to submit. General Santos entered the room carrying a secure briefcase. "Madam President, the nanobots have evolved. Our scientists have been working on new variants specifically designed for this situation." She opened the briefcase, revealing small canisters filled with what looked like gray dust. "These are atmospheric nanobots. They're designed to consume the crystalline structures that Zephyrians use for their cities and their bodies." President Brooks looked at the canisters. What would happen if we used these on their homeworld? Every Zephyrian city would crumble to dust within days, Santos replied. Their entire civilization would collapse. And the people? The nanobots would consume their crystalline physiology along with their buildings. It would be genocide, Madam President. President Brooks thought about the burning cities of Green Valley. 3 million humans had died because they refused to be slaves. The Dominion had made their choice when they decided to target civilians. "Deploy them," she ordered. Lieutenant Colonel Beth Murphy led the retaliatory strike force toward the Zephyrian homeworld of Valtos Prime. Her ships carried the new atmospheric nanobots, weapons designed for only one purpose: the complete destruction of an entire species. The Zephyrian home system was heavily defended. Orbital platforms surrounded the planet, and hundreds of warships patrolled the space lanes. It was the most protected world in the Dominion. "Ma'am, the enemy fleet is moving to intercept us," reported her tactical officer. Beth looked at the odds. 200 enemy ships against her force of 30 human vessels. Under normal circumstances, it would be suicide. But these weren't normal circumstances. Launch the nanobots at the planet's atmosphere, she ordered. Don't worry about the fleet. They'll be too busy trying to save their world to attack us. The human ships fired canisters toward Valtos Prime. The Zephyrian fleet tried to intercept them, but the canisters were small and fast. Most of them reached the planet's atmosphere and exploded, releasing clouds of nanobots into the air. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The great crystal cities of Valtos Prime continued to shine in the sunlight, their towers reaching high into the sky. But then, slowly, the towers began to crumble. The nanobots spread through the atmosphere like an invisible plague, consuming everything made of the living crystal that Zephyrians used for construction. The city of Zerith's glory, capital of the Zephyrian Empire, began to collapse as its foundations were eaten away. High Consul Zerith watched from his palace as his civilization died around him. The crystal gardens where he had played as a child were turning to dust. The great libraries that held 10,000 years of Zephyrian history were crumbling to nothing. How long do we have? He asked his science advisor. The nanobots are spreading. Exponentially, came the reply. The entire planet will be uninhabitable within 2 days. Zerith activated the emergency communication system, sending a message to the human fleet that orbited above his dying world. Human Commander, I am High Consul Zerith. I surrender. I surrender completely. Please stop the destruction of my world. Beth Murphy received the message on her flagship. She looked down at the planet below, where the crystal cities were falling like sand castles in the wind. Commander Jack Kelly, her second in command, spoke what everyone was thinking. You burned Green Valley. You killed 3 million human children. Now you learn what it means to make humans angry. The message was broadcast to every world in the galaxy. The Dominion had learned that humans didn't just fight back when attacked. They fought to win, no matter the cost. News of Valtos Prime's destruction spread terror through the remaining Dominion worlds. The other species began to question whether their alliance was worth the risk of human retaliation. The Nethys Collective was the first to break ranks. Their gaseous homeworld of Mist Harbor sent a message directly to Earth, offering separate peace and withdrawal from the Dominion alliance. The mechanical Cortex followed within hours. Their computer minds calculated the odds of victory against human nanobots and concluded that continued resistance was mathematically impossible. One by one, the Dominion member species began to abandon the alliance. Some tried to negotiate separate peace treaties with humanity. Others simply withdrew their fleets and hoped the humans would ignore them. But High Consul Zerith, watching his species die on a poisoned world, made one final desperate decision. If the Dominion was doomed, he would take as many humans with him as possible. He ordered the remaining loyal fleets to launch simultaneous attacks on every human world they could reach. It was a suicide mission, but Zerith no longer cared about survival. He wanted revenge. The attacks came without warning. Human colonies across the frontier found themselves under assault by desperate alien forces. The battles were fierce, but short. The nanobots had given humanity such a technological advantage that even surprise attacks failed. Dr. Laura Peterson, working from a secret research station, reported to President Brooks about the nanobots' continued evolution. There, learning from every encounter, the nanobots that fought the Zephyrians are different from the ones that fought the Vrathan. They adapt to each enemy's specific technology and biology. President Brooks studied the reports from the various battle zones. Human losses were minimal, while entire alien fleets were being consumed and converted into human resources. How many ships do we have now? She asked Admiral Chun. Over 2,000 combat vessels, and the number is growing every day, he replied. Every enemy ship we destroy becomes raw material for 3 or 4 human ships. Admiral Tony Harrison commanded the final assault on Dominion Central. The massive space station had been the symbol of alien power for centuries, but now it hung defenseless in space. As human fleets surrounded it, the station's defenders had watched the destruction of world after world. They knew that resistance was pointless, but they also knew that surrender might not save them. Harrison opened a communication channel to the station. Dominion Central, this is Admiral Harrison of the Terran Fleet. You have one chance to surrender. Unconditionally. The reply came from the few council members who remained on the station. We surrender. Please don't use the nanobots on civilian areas. That depends on your cooperation, Harrison replied. Prepare to receive our boarding parties. Any resistance will result in the immediate deployment of nanobots throughout the station. The boarding operation went smoothly. Human Marines took control of the station's critical systems, while the alien civilians huddled in their quarters, terrified of the weapons that could consume their homes at the molecular level. Ambassador Lisa Carter, who had started this crisis, with a failed diplomatic mission, now returned to Dominion Central as the representative of the victorious human government. She walked through the same corridors where she had once begged for membership in the galactic community. Now, the few remaining alien officials bowed when they saw her, desperate to avoid the fate that had befallen the Zephyrians. The great council chamber where humanity had been rejected was now empty except for a single figure, High Consul Zereth, brought from his dying world to witness the end of the Dominion. You wanted to see humans submit, Lisa said to the broken crystal being. Instead, you learned what happens when humans. One student raised his hand. Why didn't we just surrender like they wanted? Mary looked at the young faces around her. Because humans don't surrender when someone threatens our families. When someone hurts human children, we fight back with everything we have. Another student asked, Are we the bad guys now? It was a question that many adults struggled to answer. Mary chose her words carefully. We protect what's ours, and we help those who want to be helped. But we never forget what happens to people who threaten human worlds. The lesson ended with the students reciting the pledge that every human child learned. We are strong because we must be. We are united because we choose. 6 months after the war ended, High Consul Zereth knelt in the rebuilt council chamber on Earth. The crystal being who had once ruled a galactic empire now wore simple restraints that prevented him from using what remained of his natural abilities. President. Helen Brooks sat in the chair that had once belonged to the most powerful alien in the galaxy. Around her, human officials occupied the seats where Dominion Council members had made decisions for thousands of years. The Terran Federation accepts your complete surrender, President Brooks announced formally. All Zephyrian military assets are now property of humanity. All surviving Zephyrian civilians will be relocated to designated worlds under human supervision. Zereth's voice was barely a whisper. My people are dying. The nanobots poisoned our world. We need help to survive. You should have thought about that before you burned Green Valley, Brooks replied coldly. But humanity is not without mercy. We will provide aid to civilian populations that cooperate with our reconstruction efforts. The surrender ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy, showing every surviving species what happened to those who challenged human authority. But the victory had come with costs that troubled many humans. General Carl Davis stood in the ruins of the Vrathan homeworld, watching human construction crews work alongside alien survivors. The nanobots had consumed most of the planet's infrastructure, leaving billions of aliens homeless and starving. Sir, the refugee camps are overcrowded, reported Colonel Lisa Martinez. We don't have enough food and medical supplies for all. The displaced civilians. Carl looked at the endless rows of temporary shelters housing former citizens of the Dominion. How many are we feeding now? About 40 million on this world alone, Lisa replied. That number is growing every day as more refugees arrive from other systems. The problem was spreading across former Dominion space. The nanobots had been incredibly effective at destroying military targets, but they had also consumed the civilian infrastructure that kept alien societies functioning. Power plants, water treatment facilities, transportation networks, all had been built with technology that the nanobots saw as fair targets. Dr. Amanda Foster led the humanitarian effort to reverse the nanobot damage. Her team worked around the clock to develop construction nanobots that could rebuild what the weapon nanobots had destroyed. The process is slower than we hoped, she reported to President Brooks during a secure video conference. The weapon nanobots were designed to consume and destroy. The construction versions have to be much more careful about what they build and where they build it. President Brooks studied the reports from across the former Dominion. How long before we can restore basic services to the occupied worlds? At least 5 years, Amanda replied. And that's assuming full cooperation from the local populations. Some species are refusing to work with us out of pride or fear. The resistance movements were small but persistent. On the former Cortex worlds, mechanical beings tried to rebuild their technology in secret, hoping to find a way to fight the nanobots. On Nephi's gas worlds, clouds of sentient beings plotted to poison human atmospheric processors. Captain Steve Roberts commanded the patrol fleets that enforced the new order. His ships carried both types of nanobots, construction bots for worlds that cooperated, and weapon bots for those that didn't. Sir, we're detecting unauthorized technology development. On Cortex Prime, his tactical officer reported, they're trying to build some kind of shielding against nanobots. Steve looked at the intelligence data. The mechanical beings were clever, but they didn't understand the human nanobots evolved with each encounter. Deploy a reconnaissance swarm. Let's see what they're building before we decide how to respond. The reconnaissance nanobots infiltrated the Cortex facility and transmitted data back to the human fleet. The aliens were trying to develop technology that could resist nanobot consumption, but their efforts were doomed to failure. They're using organic components mixed with mechanical ones, Steve's science officer explained. They think the nanobots won't attack living tissue. Will it work? Steve asked. No, sir. Our nanobots adapted to consume organic matter during the war with the Zephyrians. These new Cortex devices will be consumed just like everything else. Steve opened a communication channel to the planet. Cortex Prime, this is Captain Roberts of the Terran Patrol Fleet. You are in violation of the surrender terms. Cease all unauthorized technology development immediately. The reply came from the mechanical leader of the facility. Humans, we seek only to survive. Our people are dying without proper technology to maintain our bodies. Then you should have requested assistance through proper channels, Steve replied. Instead, you chose to develop weapons in secret, deploying nanobots now. The facility was consumed within hours, its technology converted into more human equipment. The Cortex workers were evacuated safely, but the message was clear. Any attempt to rebuild military capability would be met with immediate destruction. On Earth, President Brooks met with the leaders of the new Terran Federation. Representatives from hundreds of worlds now reported to the human government, but many of them were refugees from species that had lost their homeworlds. The integration process is proceeding, reported Secretary of Colonial Affairs Kevin Turner. Most alien populations are adapting to human administration. Food distribution is stable, and we're making progress on infrastructure reconstruction. What about the resistance movements? Brooks asked. They're losing support, Kevin replied. When people see that cooperation brings food and shelter, While resistance brings nanobots, most choose cooperation. But some humans were beginning to question whether the victory had been worth the cost. Senator Jane Phillips from the Europa colony raised concerns that were shared by many citizens. Madam President, we've become rulers of a galaxy full of refugees and ruins. Half the alien species are facing extinction because their worlds can't. Support them anymore? Are we liberators or conquerors? President Brooks had wrestled with the same question for months. We didn't start this war, Senator. The Dominion forced us to choose between submission and survival. We chose survival. But now we're responsible for billions of alien civilians, Jane continued. Some of our own people are saying we've become the same kind of oppressors that the Dominion was. The debate reflected a growing divide in human society. Some believed that total victory was necessary to ensure humanity's survival. Others worried that humans were becoming the very thing they had fought against. Commander Susan Blake represented the more aggressive faction. She led exploration fleets beyond the edge of the former Dominion space, searching for new civilizations that might pose future threats. Madam President, we've discovered 3 more spacefaring species in the outer rim, she reported from her flagship. All of them have advanced technology and large fleets. If we wait for them to attack us, we might face the same situation we had with the Dominion. Are they showing hostile intentions? Brooks asked. Not yet, Susan admitted. But neither did the Dominion until they decided we were a threat. I recommend we make contact and establish human authority before they have a chance to organize against us. The recommendation troubled President Brooks. Were humans becoming a galactic empire, based on fear and preemptive strikes? Or were they simply learning the harsh lesson that survival in the galaxy required strength? She made her decision after reviewing intelligence reports about the new alien species. They were already forming alliances and building fleets. History suggested they would eventually see humanity as a threat to be eliminated. Commander Blake, you are authorized to make contact with the new species. Offer them the same choice we've given everyone else. Join the Terran Federation as partners, or face the consequences of opposition. The message was sent to the 3 alien civilizations: submit to human authority, or face the nanobots that had consumed the Dominion. 2 of the species agreed to negotiate. The third, a proud warrior culture called the Hegemony, refused to acknowledge human authority. Their refusal lasted exactly 4 days before nanobot swarms began consuming their fleets and military installations. The lesson of the Dominion had been learned, but some species still needed personal experience to understand human resolve. In schools across human space, children learned about the war that had transformed their species from hopeful diplomats to galactic rulers. The official history was simple. Humans had been forced to fight for survival and had won so completely that they now led the galaxy. Teacher Mary Anderson explained the war to her class of 8-year-olds on New Mars. The aliens thought humans were weak because we wanted peace. They learned that wanting peace doesn't mean being afraid to fight.